Today's topic can fall under a number of categories, but I'm going to put it under theology. We're going to talk about the role of elders in a New Testament church. It turns out that the Bible has something to say about authority and structure within the church. And what I want you to do as you go through this topic, maybe with a pastoral team, with your own elders, with a small group, is to compare the New Testament picture with your church. These insights are taken from the book Biblical Eldership. I'll put a link to this book. It's actually a booklet in this case. I'll put that link down below. We're going to talk about the role of elders, the qualification of elders, and then something called the plurality of elders. Let's start with the role. Here's what the author says. The offices of God's church are not honorary positions bestowed on individuals who have attended church faithfully or who are senior in years. Now, if this is what your church elder board looks like, in other words, it's positionally appointed men, maybe men and women, but they're just sort of ruling elders. They sit there and make decisions rather than actually do any shepherding. Maybe that's not the most biblical elder board. 1 Peter 5:2, it says, care for the flock that God has entrusted to you. Watch over it willingly, not grudgingly, not for what you will get out of it, but because you're eager to serve God. This verse sort of embodies the heart of a biblical elder. It's not just someone who sits on a committee to make decisions about the church. It's a godly man who wants to shepherd, oversee, care for the local church. So ask yourself, in your case, are the elders on our team interested in some honorary position, or are they interested in actually caring for the people? Here's the second thing. The author says, in order for an eldership to operate effectively, the elders must show mutual regard for one another, submit themselves to one another, patiently wait upon one another, genuinely consider one another's interests and perspectives, and defer to one another. Now, typically when you think about qualifications of an elder, you go to something like 1 Timothy 3, and that's a great place to start. A church leader must be a man whose life is above reproach. He has self-control. He lives wisely. He's not a heavy drinker or violent. He must be gentle, and he must not love money. He manages his own family well. This passage and some other passages like it, I'm sure you've already looked at when you've considered who should be an elder at your church. But what we're talking about right here is how elders relate to one another, that they submit themselves to one another, that they listen to one another, that they consider one another's interests and perspectives. In other words, that no one elder in the church feels like he is above the others or feels like he can trump the others or act in an unchristlike way toward the others. Now, again, in your own elder meetings or in your pastor meetings, can you say that this is true? The idea behind this is to embody the heart and the attitude of Christ, who is our leader. He's of course, the head pastor of the church. And are we treating one another the way Jesus looks at us and treats us? And that leads to the last point, which is about the plurality of eldership. The author says Jesus Christ gave the church plurality of leadership. The 12 comprised the first leadership council of the church, and in the most exemplary way, jointly led and taught the first Christian community. Titus 1:5 is instructive on this point. Paul says, I left you on the island of Crete so you could complete our work there and appoint elders in each town as I instructed you. Now notice here he says elders, not an elder. He didn't appoint a senior pastor, this solo guy that has all of the leadership authority in the church. And this to me is probably the most interesting point in this short booklet on biblical eldership. I think this is where the church in America today needs to probably be the most introspective. If Jesus didn't set up a church where one guy had all of the authority and decision-making power, then maybe we should think twice about setting up our churches to work like that. In the New Testament, there wasn't such a thing as a pastoral staff and an elder team. All of the leaders in the church were elders, or I guess you could have called them pastors, because that was their job, to actively shepherd and care for the people in the church. That's the biblical role of leaders, not just in the New Testament, but in the church today.